Welcome. My name is Erica Ashton, and I'm the Festival Director for the Black Consciousness Festival. It gives me great pleasure to introduce this conversation, Black Portraiture When We See Ourselves. To lead this conversation is Adeline Gregoire. Adeline Gregoire is a cultural practitioner, activist, artist, and curator based in Trinidad and Tobago. In 2013, she co-founded Culturego, an online cultural platform to amplify the voices of artists and creatives from Trinidad and Tobago, the Caribbean, and the Caribbean diaspora. She has organized a series of public art events and collaborations over the years, and she has also founded a non-profit organization called Women Everywhere in Trinidad and Tobago, which focuses on empowerment for women and girls. Adeline Gregoire, thank you for being here with us. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Have a beautiful conversation.
Thank you so much, Erica. A real pleasure to be here and an honor to be a part of this festival. And, bravo for making it happen despite COVID. So, hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us this afternoon. Today, it's just a pure honor for me to be able to have a conversation today with two incredible artists whom I've just discovered thanks to the good folks at the Black Consciousness Festival. So today I'm joined by Kamar Thomas and Ebube. Ebube, you're going to have to help me with the pronunciation of your name. Nwaokpani, is that it?
Nwaokpani. Nwaokpani.
Nwaokpani. Okay, great. Nwaokpani. Thank you. Nwaokpani. Fantastic. So welcome, guys. So today we're going to have a great conversation about Black portraiture as seen in your work and the necessity of grounding persons of color, Black and brown, even indigenous folks around the world in the work that we create. So I'm first going to dive into the conversation by asking you, well, tell me a little bit about what you do, because this is as much an introduction for me. It's the first time we're meeting each other. Tell me about yourselves and what is the type of work you do, as well as your process. Maybe Kumar, would you like to start, or maybe Ebube?
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. Let me start. For me, I do into basically digital paintings. So I think that's like the popular one now. So I do digital paintings, and the kind of art I do is basically surrealistic art. So more like surrealism, but more of a subtle type of surrealism. Because if you go online and check out, surrealism is like very, very strong, like very deep. But I just do it on a subtle level, but with more of this Afro or African style or something, or African theme. So that's basically what I do, digital painting and surrealism.
Fantastic. And I saw, thanks a lot for that. And I saw in your bio that you're currently a student. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm currently a student of Obafemi Awolowo University.
Yes, in Nigeria. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And yeah, fantastic. Great. I'm so happy. It's always a pleasure to meet people who are able to pursue their passion, especially a career in art and visual art specifically. So let's go over to Kumar. Hi, Kumar.
Hello, I am Kamar. I'm primarily an oil painter. And when I went to the US, I discovered that Black meant something else. And what specifically it means, we can get into at another date. But when I started painting, I wanted to come up with a metaphor that would represent identity, would represent what Black meant. And the metaphor I found was a mask and a performance and both. So my work is large oil on canvas paintings that explore identity through the metaphor of masks and performance and both. So they're very colorful and they represent the many parts that an identity can have as they change over time.
Great. Thank you so much for that. So just before we jump into the conversation, we probably have a quick look at some of your work, just so that everyone who's tuned in with us this evening, they'll have an idea of the variety of work and even the vibrancy as well. And that is going to sort of frame our conversation. So maybe we can start with some work by Kumar. Kumar, you have several series that I really enjoyed. For example, Me, Myself, and I. There's also Schizophrenic Masculinity. And the last one, which there's also Myth. I can't remember clearly if that's the series on the masks. But yeah, for example, we have a look here at Schizophrenic Masculinity, and you also have a series dedicated to Schizomica, which explores the lived experiences of immigrant people and immigrants who come to Jamaica in search of another life. Yeah, so yeah, this is some of the incredible work done by Kamar Thomas, folks. Thank you. So let's have a look as well at Ebube's work, which is equally colorful and very vibrant. However, what is very distinct in Ebube's work is the placement of these very colorful portraits in space. So there's very much a vision for Afrofuturism, and it's a very deliberate choice. Yeah. And here as well for in Ebube's work, there's a lot of masculinity that is explored, as well as the variety of that, because there's not one way, and we'll get into that conversation. There's not one way of being masculine or even feminine. Yeah, so let's start this conversation. So my first question is, well, for both of you, and it, as we mentioned, it concerns identity. So this is a very much a hot topic, I would say, or a very central theme in the work of many people, especially when we're coming out of diverse spaces such as the Caribbean and fast evolving spaces like Africa. I mean, everywhere is just advancing so much at, such a great pace. And simultaneously, our societies and our people are evolving at that rate. So my question is for both of you, Kumar and Ebube, how would each one of you define identity? And the second part of that question is, what are these identities that you're exploring and even projecting in your work? So perhaps we can start with Ebube. How would you define identity? What does that mean for you?
Oh, for me, identity is kind of like, sorry. For me, identity is kind of like a personal view. It's just like a personal journey for people. So it's like your mental health, it's like your physical health, how you feel at a particular, I don't know if you can see it very well, but how you feel at a particular period of time, your growth and everything. So bringing that into the topic of Black and race and everything, I won't really say I'm very much into, or I really understand the concept of identity, basically because I live in Nigeria and I've always lived in Nigeria, and it's kind of, you don't really know what Black is when you live in Africa because that's all you see. So I think identity for me is kind of like a personal journey. It's more of a personal thing, and that's why I explain my art. It's in my artworks are mostly like I basically just use normal feelings that everybody can relate to. It's like, let me say, your feeling of peace, your feeling of serenity, your muse and everything. So that's like sorry, somebody's
Great.
trying to get the ball. That's like, I think, yeah. yeah, that's like the way I see I see my art as something like a natural general thing. Yeah. So
Great.
So yeah.
Thank you, Ebube. Well, I mean, very first things first, there's no I prefer to speak of identities versus identities. So I don't think, and that this is the question. There's no right reason or right answer for identity. So I totally get what you're saying, and it's there is a lot more and it's a lot deeper to talk about identity, and that definitely is dependent on time and space where you are. For example, yourself, you're based in Nigeria, we're over here in the Caribbean. Kumar is in Canada at the moment, I think. So that is definitely contingent on those factors of time and space. So thanks for that. Kumar, how would you define what is identity for you, Kumar, and what are the identities that you are projecting in your work and exploring?
I'm glad you asked. So I start with culture first. Marketing guy named Seth Godin defined culture concisely, and I've stolen it from him, and I'm not giving it back. Culture is how we do things over here. How we do things over here. And the identity is the we part, is that word in it. So if you move to somewhere new, you still know how you did things where you're from. How important that is, how important the we is, that defines your identity. You with me so far?
Yeah.
You with me? Okay. So the question now is, if you're in a new context or you're looking for a particular result, you have to change how we do things over here. Because if you keep doing the same thing, you get the same results. So if you want to increase tangible things like test scores, if you want to be more fashionable, if you want to get into a particular kind of music, you're going to have to change how you do things. But the we still remains. Are you a part of the we? Are you allowed to be a part of the we? And that question is almost always negotiable for some people and not negotiable for other people. So identity is figuring out what the we in how we do things over here means. Who else is doing things like you? And these are small questions like how you dress, how you speak, and large questions like what God you worship, who are you allowed to be married to, what do you expect that marriage to look like if you do get married. So the we and how we do things is very, very wide and very, very broad. And the real interesting bits come when they come into conflict, when something that you want to do for you does not match how we do things over here, or something that is for you clearly better for you, we don't do that over here. So pick an activity you wanna. I've been thinking a lot about relationships, and depending on where you're from, you don't just kind of have your relationship all by yourself out on an island. It's your family is involved from the wedding the whole time, and your family is in your business to varying degrees, and your identity decides what degree that is, how much are they in it. So identity for me, how do we do things around here.
Great, thank you. And in terms of, do you see that that singularity and even the broader plural, the pluralism that is attached to identity? How do you sort of see that in your work coming out as a theme?
Yeah, so I make works in series. It's never one. Seeing one of them is, it's kind of nice, but they almost always have to be understood in the context of more than one and as a change over time. the idea with masks is you get to put on masks well, we're in a pandemic now. We all know about wearing masks, and masks are serious business. And the mask that I have to wear everywhere used to be a sign that you're either a surgeon or a nurse. Now you're just a responsible person going outside. So the meaning of the mask changed, even though you're still you, as you didn't fundamentally change anything about yourself. So identity as a mask means you're still you on the one hand, but there are parts of you that change or that look different. So my first series that I ever painted was myself, and I used face paint to paint a fully abstract painting 7 times from 5 feet to 7 feet. And the trick was nobody would know that it was me, nor would they care. They would just see a human with a changing series of colors from one painting to the next. Monumental, unashamed.
Great.
And that doesn't sound like it's easy, but if you have a particularly strong or visible identity, the expectation is that it's going to be upfront in your work. And if you can manage to have people think beyond that, you've won. If you can have people think, oh, well, identities with a plural, they start to think of how they are connected.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Makes so much sense. Thanks for that. So let's I'm glad you brought up the question mask, and you have precisely an entire series dedicated to masks. I was going to ask, obviously, well, the obvious question is, how is everyone dealing with the pandemic? But masks in their essence are not they're not some far-fetched idea, especially for us here in the Caribbean, Afro-descendants, and even Ebube, where you are in Nigeria, where we've gotten this our entire relationship to duality and the possibility of a human being being several entities at once. All of this is at the heart and the core of African tradition and Western African tradition. So the masks are not very different for us. How are you, Ebube? Are you still very much connected to masks? And what does this mask mean for you? Does any of what Kumar mentioned, putting on a mask and the duality of who you are, does that resonate with you?
I'll say, do you mean mask in terms of metaphorical mask or the real corona mask though?
No, not corona mask. I mean, we don't have a choice.
Yeah.
The legacy of mask, and even our whole psychological approach to the fact that we are several beings at once. And there is that person who we project, but there's also the real person, and there are several other people depending on where we are. So how does that resonate with you at all?
Yeah, it totally does, like big time, because I'm naturally the kind of person. I grew up being the kind of person that is kind of shy, or not, I won't say shy, but like I wasn't really very outspoken at first to a point, and I would be outspoken to a particular set of people. And I think that always continued, even till now, like right as I'm in school, it still feels like that. So I understand the concept of putting on that mask for people to see what people see, what a particular set of people see, what another set of people see. And it's just like different versions of you. But it's not like, I don't think it's comes from a place of like pretense or something. I think it's just like a natural thing. You meet a particular person and you're comfortable with this person, you let loose, you open up that mask, that first mask, and you're talking and you're open and you're laughing, you're goofy. And you meet another set of people and you're just very, very by yourself. You're very by yourself. I won't say inferior, you're just staying by yourself, more calm, more chilled, and everything. And I think on a general note, I think it's just a social thing. It's like most times people aren't really, as long as you can't really talk what people think about you, it's like that's like one of the biggest issues we have, because what we express in our faces can be totally different from what we have in our mind. And that's always been one of my it's been something that I've always tried to find out, like, okay, when I look at somebody, what exactly this person trying to feel. And even in my artworks, it says how can I really be able to express what this person is feeling through their expression, through their faces. And so I think the mask thing is just like a natural thing for us. I can't really say it's for me. Yeah. I can't really say it's for everyone. So,
of course, yeah. And yeah. Just to add to that, I think I really like what you said, that, it's a way of looking at masks as maybe complementary. There's no conflicting, and it's not necessarily two-timing anyone or being dishonest. It's just that I think some societies, for example, as I said, the Caribbean, through our own legacies and history attached to the fact that the human being can be several things at the same time, we do have a greater ease in accepting that there will be a variety of masks, and this can evolve over time. So that leads really into my other question, which is more centered on the idea of masculinity and masculinities. There is definitely a monolithic idea of, I would say, of blackness, what it means to be black, and even more so being a black male for people who identify that way. So can we talk about this, what these stereotypes may look like? For example, Kumar, maybe we start with you. In Jamaica, Canada, and even Nigeria, we back to you, Ebube. Let's talk about this monolith, or these monoliths that we have constructed of blackness and masculinity. Kumar?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's my opinion, and then there's how that shows up in my work, and they are almost the opposite. My work is intended to seduce, to persuade, and my opinion can get me canceled immediately. So I'm going to tell you now, why not? So
like both.
I've gotten into and have had far more difficulty about being male than I have been about being black. Like far more. It's not even close. A lot more hostility and open, just plain old threats about being male than being black. And I'll put that on the table, and I'll move as I examine culture in general, especially when I was a school teacher. It is significantly unemphasized the sorts of difficulties that young boys have to deal with. So when I was a school teacher, for example, when the girls were doing badly, parents would come to behead me, which I expect. I'm not doing my job. My students doing badly. It's cool. Young girls, I'll take it. That's what I get the paycheck for. Let me go figure out how to teach this better. When the boys would be doing badly, they'd blame the boys. So when the girls did badly, they blamed the school. They blamed the teachers. When the boys did badly, they blamed the boys. That is a lot to carry.
This is very interesting. And this is where, in Jamaica or Canada?
This is in Jamaica when I was a school teacher. I then went to the US. I was a grad student and then a professor the whole time. I'm still a professor, just in Canada now. And when you teach a student, it starts with their identity. It's the decisions about how they do things starts long before they meet you. So when I ask them about what they're learning here and their chances of applying it in the future, the difference between the girls and the boys It's not even close. Girls are like, of course I'm gonna make it. The future is female. And boys are like, oh, I'm just doing this for fun. And then I'm gonna like figure out they've already given up before they've even begun. And where does that come from? Where does that come from? How is it reinforced? How does it propagate? I don't have all the answers for that, but I can tell you, speaking to people, would you rather have a son or a daughter? They're picking a daughter every time. Yeah, because it's better, because you don't have to, I understand the sort of emphasis now, but let me tell you, think of your younger cousins and relatives that aren't doing well in school, that are dropped out, that are in prison. How many of them are girls? Think of it. Think hard. Think of the size of the bottom of society. How many of them are girls? These people are in my class. And I realized this when I got to the US. Wait a minute. I'm doing pretty well academically. Where the guys at? Not here. Where are they at? Now, I realized that this kind of, I needed to change this, but I can't say it the way I just said it to you. That's not, people don't like that at all. People don't like when you come into their country.
All right, yeah. Yeah.
It's right now because I'm fairly old and nobody can cancel me so easily. But at 19, at 20, you can't walk up into somebody's country and go, hey, change this, change that. So I have to figure out a way of persuading people, and also a way of getting the boys themselves at the time to see their identity as a little bit as changeable over time, and also as something that is not, you can expand outside of it. Feels like you're being attacked all the time, but it's still very much within your capacity and your skill. And you kind of have to. Nobody's coming to save you. You kind of have to figure out what parts of your identity to emphasize to get the results you want. Hence, the gigantic paintings. They could have been regular sized, but I realized that to get the idea of change in identity over time, and to get the idea that masculinity can be the entire rainbow, if need be. Flowers, who's going to stop me? You? You can't stop me. I'm looking for things that are traditionally as girly as I can find them. I'm putting makeup. I have eye accoutrements. I have earrings that are unnecessarily too long. Just slowly but surely expanding what it is masculinity is in a very long game attempt to expand the idea that one is under attack, or the idea that the future is not yours, to go, maybe it is. Maybe a small step in the outward appearance can help you with the inward as well.
Yeah. Well, Kumar, thanks for that. You answered both the first part and the second part of the question. So I am hearing from you that in Jamaica and the United States, the narrative of what it means to be a Black male is one that society pretty much expects underachievement, and it even feels threatening. So let's hear from Ebube. What is expected? What are these stereotypes of Blackness and maleness, masculinity for you in Nigeria, Ebube?
Well, funny enough, I think I won't speak for the whole of Nigeria, but I'll speak for what I've seen.
That's okay.
I feel it's totally different from his own part, because it's kind of expected as a guy that you should be successful. You should be. I think you've heard of different stories of African men that are fighting to be dominant in society or something. And you can't just be a normal person. You have to be something that is, you have to be a provider, you have to be responsible for your woman. Because even if, I'll speak for, even if she had everything, you still have to be responsible for whoever you are with or something. So I feel it's totally different in the sense that you have to step up as a man in Africa or speak for Africa. But then it's not exactly a good thing, because if you hear me say, okay, you have to step up, it will feel like, and they also give like many chances. I think, I don't know, but he said, and he was saying something about people, like the parents not being very into what your male child is doing, and being more attentive of what your female. I think reverse is the case in Africa, because here it's like more often you're thinking of, okay, this girl is going to get married and this guy is going to be the provider, so let me put more attention into this guy's education and more attention into his agility as a man. But then where it becomes a bad thing, because for someone like me, I'm not exactly much of the stereotypical person in terms of how I think, but no, in terms of how let me say, the kind of things that I'm into, because as a guy, you should obviously like sports, you should be into, I don't know, I can't really mention most of them, but there are many things
that's okay. That's all right.
Yeah, there are many stereotypical things that you should have as a man in Africa, or you should be as a man in Africa. And I'm not really, I am most of those things, but I don't really see it as more. I don't really see the pressure to be that kind of person. So I think from what you said, I think when we started, you said something about my art being kind of a masculine, have a masculine theme or a black male theme or something. And I think most of the time, to a large extent, I always try to mix it up. Like, okay, most of my things are like, because men are not really very optimistic. They're more of realists, and the women are more of the optimistic kind and everything. So I feel when most of what I do is my art is like shows the male portrait or the male figure with an optimistic kind of mindset. So I think if you know the name, some of them like the visionary stargazing, where there was a picture of a man looking, and is what the smoke was forming a planet or forming space or something. So that was like an allusion to optimism, and that's more of what I try to build. And because, like I said, because living in Nigeria, you have to be realist. You have to know that, okay, everybody is going to have to fight for what you want. You have to be able to step up as a person to become the best of what's like best in you. You have to be a provider, like I said. So that optimism kind of washes away as you grow up. The more you're growing, the more you know that, okay, nothing is going to be as beautiful. When you see something going very good, you're looking for where it's going to go bad at the end of the day. So I think my own art was kind of like a therapy for me, and also a therapy for many other men around, or many other people. I don't say men because I don't really think of men exactly when I do my works. I just think of general. I think of it on a general level. So many other people around, I just think of it as a therapy for most of us in Africa and outside of Africa. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Ebube. So I mean, coming from they're two totally different takes on what it means to be black male, or to what it is, what blackness is, what masculinities are from both you and Kumar. But however, what I do here, what the common thread is definitely that in your work, you both are really just seeking to expand whatever those monoliths are and undo these stereotypes. And that is just admirable. And obviously it's just been so great to see that come through a lot of your pieces. This question comes actually for Ebube. A lot of your works, and I think it really does flow from what you said, the optimistic part of things, the optimism and the vision that is typically attributed to the feminine side of us all, in terms of we are allowed to take time to appreciate beauty, for example, whereas somehow it seems as though, men, they seem to be wired, or we sort of put them in that box to be always focusing on the very logical. So there's the aesthetic part of things. Ebube, this question is, you specifically place a lot of your figures in space in a very Afro-futuristic way. And for me, it's an important part of the conversation because we're talking about representation, and a lot of the works that we see, a lot of just imagery, visual culture, speaks to us of a present and also a future that does not include Black people, actually. So, I mean, this is a very wide and broad question, and we'll go into the details little by little. But Ebube, just really quickly back to you. How did this idea of putting your Black people into space come about and surrounded by planets? Is this just an extension of the optimism, or is there another idea behind it?
Yeah, first of all, it's kind of an extension of the optimism because, okay, if I start from the beginning, I kind of am into like space stuff, and not that I know much about it, but I'm just kind of thrilled by it because it just shows your level of exposure, your level of exploration. That's metaphorically, not exactly that I want to go outside of space or something, but it just shows that, okay, you're ready to explore to the like infinite knowledge or something like that. So I think that's where it first came from, because when I did the first work, the first work I did that had to do with not exactly space, but I think the night sky or something. I did it just on a level of just to make an artwork, and then I did it and I liked it because I felt I could really relate with what it was in terms of, like I said, the optimism part and also the exploration, the feeling of the unbound feeling, because space is
no boundaries,
space is vast.
just
Yeah,
limitless,
space is very vast. So that's exactly what I think. It's just based on the temperament for now, because if over time I say, okay, I wanted to make, when I first started, I had more works that I had to do with, like, for instance, flowers and stuff like that. And that was also, it also had the same idea. Flowers are things that, okay, this just explores beauty. Now I have the temperament to just make something that that shows exploration, that shows vastness, that shows infinity. And that's what I'm just flowing with for now. And the fact that there are Black people there, like I said, it's something that I can relate with. I can't just put somebody that I'm not really in tune with, or I've not even seen or related with as much as I relate with every other Black. Everybody I see around me is Black. The white person around you is just like I'll pick you out.
Yeah,
as, okay,
and we'll get to that.
Yeah, so
yeah.
So that's how it.
I will get to that. So I definitely. Yeah, sorry. It was just there's a bit of lapse in time, so I sort of cut you. I apologize for that. But I definitely saw I mean, obviously we all see what is important to us. So I definitely saw in your work, and I found your work was very brilliant and inspiring for me, in that I know, I mean, growing up in the Caribbean, and we are the majority in the Caribbean of Black and brown and colored people and of indigenous heritage. However, when you step back and you have a look at what is being fed to us through popular media culture and our imagery, we are still surrounded by the westernized and a very white ideal. And so it always has me thinking, even in the present, we do not exist. So I'm always very much attracted to and inspired by work that deliberately places the BIPOC community in the future and also grounding us in the present. Because believe it or not, we somehow still seem to be visually underrepresented. So I'd like to thanks for that, Ebube, and we just jump over to Kumar to talk about, again, grounding, seeing ourselves in the present. And I'd like to take you up here, Kamar, on your series, Me, Myself, and I, and Schizophrenic Masculinity. Mental illness is a big deal now, not because it didn't exist before, but again, as much as science and research is done, we realize that mental illness is a real thing, and that many people, especially most vulnerable societies, have been exposed to trauma, hardship in very disproportionate ways, which all actually contribute to mental illness and mental disorders. So, for example, schizophrenia has been classified, obviously, as one of these mental illnesses. So this is a very contemporary. This is something that we all suffer with in a contemporary way. And how important was it for you, Kumar, to speak about something that is so relevant, mental illness, for example, in your work through these series?
Yes, as we know, I'm a persuader. I try to seduce. I try to bring people in slowly, and then feed them the medicine. And then feed them the medicine, because I don't. Being direct was not a part of my temperament as a very young man. Now I'm old. It's no problem. But as a young man, I have to figure out, how do I change people's minds about masculinity, even though culturally it's not really in right now. It's not really that good to be a young man trying to move and shake things. It's not ideal. It's not really, when you watch the news, if it's a news story, if there's a man involved, he's dead. It's generally a lot of what we see is negative. How do I?
Yeah, exactly.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to add, especially if it's a black male, it's either there's either the death or there's an ultra violence attached to the image or the concept of a black man, or even a white man. Just the male seems just problematic,
male in general,
things, right?
Yeah, and it's not like I can decide to one day not be a male. I just am, and it's problematic. And my idea is, I need to change what masculinity is, and I need to explain it for what it has become and how it is to deal with it as a person that has to decide what masculinity will be for them. And schizophrenia is a wonderful metaphor, not least of which because it's all up in my family. I ask people I date if they have any schizophrenia, because it's so. I have uncles, I have cousins. Every generation of my family has 1, 2, or 3 schizophrenic. So I am legit terrified that it's not me, but it might be my child. So I'm very serious. And when I was in college, they had this volunteer class you could do where you would go down to a mental health clinic. They'd give you they'd ask you to put some blocks, like the square blocks, into a square hole, and a round ball into a round hole, a triangular one. Those things that children do. They would ask you to do that. The catch is, they would give you some headphones. They tell you, just put these in, and when you're done, leave the room. We'll give you you sign your time. You've done your volunteer work. The trick is, while you're doing it, they give you some headphones. In the headphones, they're telling you a story about all kinds of things. And every now and again, the story would go, throw the block across the room. Or the voice would say, why are you putting this block in here? Or the story would say, why are you even sitting in this chair? And that's And at the end, they tell you that's what it's like to have schizophrenia. You're living your life, and then your own brain goes, just splash this water on the wall. Just do, your own head is telling you to do things, and you can't really control it. And as a person becoming male, there is what's sort of required. You can't date nobody's daughter if you don't have any money. You need a job. You need to carve out your significance in life. When people meet you, they ask, so what do you do? If you don't have an answer, the judgment is not good.
Bye.
You need
Yeah.
So what you pick as a profession and what you wear and how you carry yourself, is the pressure is immense from very, very young. And it feels like what you want to do and then culturally what's required are sometimes at odds. And that's where the idea of schizophrenic masculinity came from. So a lot of those paintings, you'll see they seem to be made up of many, many parts. And also, if you flip them upside down, they work. So they have one part that can be seen like this, and another, if you flip it, you still see a face. So it points to the idea that one's identity is many things, but that they are almost always in tension. Is that good? Is that bad? I don't know. You have to decide for yourself. But it is there, and it's a slight expansion on the negative view of masculinity that's popular. That it's a little bit more complicated than that, is what I was attempting to say with those paintings. And mental health is, on the one hand, you don't get to pick it. You got it. You don't sign up and, let me make things hard for me forever.
Absolutely. And that's a whole entire conversation for another day. As I mentioned before, I asked the question, we have identified, and even more and more just abundant research, that there are populations due to history, very specifically. It's not only the medical and the biological aspect of things, but just life and history have created scenarios where vulnerable populations are more and more exposed to mental illness, to chronic stress, just because it's, as we say, the life. So we definitely see that coming out in your work, Kamar. And I think it's very vital for us to be able to see ourselves and understand that this is not a first world, I hate to use that term, but this is not a developed country illness. This is something that's very real, that is affecting people on a human level, and it has nothing to do with socioeconomics or where you are. So just before we move into the last question, for those of you who've joined us a bit late, I just want us to have a look at Kamar's work based on what we were discussing. So me, myself, and I, if we can have a look at that artwork really quickly, a few slides, and then Ebube's work, where he grounds a lot of his portraits in the future with the constellations and the limitlessness of the universe and exploration that is possible. Can we get that artwork up? Is it possible? So it's, we're gonna see it in a little bit. So these are some of, again, folks, these are Kamar Thomas's pieces from a few of his series. I believe this one is related to schizophrenic masculinity. The one before would have been maybe from the Me, Myself, and I series, and now we can have a look at Ebube's work, where his portraits are in space. Great. Beautiful. Just blurring all the lines, as you said, Kamar, being as outright and subversive as possible. Great. So this is Ebube's, these are some of Ebube's work that we're moving into, where he is, making that decision to capture people, Black portraiture in the present, as well as, ideas of masculinity under pressure, but also very much rooted in the future, where anything is possible and there is limitless, and there's even a weightlessness to it, because as Ebube, you said, the for you, at least in Nigeria, your idea of being, the ideas attached to masculinity are so varied and so intense, so it can feel a bit overwhelming at times. Great. So thanks for the artwork. And this brings us, I just have one last question, and then we're going to wrap this amazing conversation. So the title of our talk today was Black Portraiture, When We See Ourselves. And this is directly inspired by, I'm sure you all are familiar with it, Ava DuVernay's series that's available, everywhere, I guess. But definitely on Ava's site and her socials, When They See Us. So Black Portraiture, When We See Ourselves. And this is a very personal question for both you, Kumar and Ebube. What do y'all think really happens on a representational level when we see ourselves as Black people, brown people, folks of the BIPOC diaspora and community? What really happens? Ebube, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand what really happens, and I'm not sure I understand the question first.
Yeah, what do you think? What is the meaning for you? As in, do you feel as though when we see ourselves in Black artwork, what do you feel? What is, for example, for you when you, and I think you alluded to that before, in you're painting people who look like you because this is your environment and you're surrounded by Black and brown people with your features, people who look like you. So what is that emotion, or what do you feel? Let's narrow it down when you see this type of artwork.
Well, I just feel like it's kind of expanding the identity in terms of who we are as Black people, and it's kind of more and more giving people a sense of belonging of Black. That's both in the media and in art generally. So if you're thinking of, I think the reason where it all started was where we started making art for things like the Renaissance art or something like that, the medieval art and stuff. Those were white arts. So I feel like that was what we have as the identity of art. That's what we feel like, okay, this is what people look like, this is what art looks like. If you think about something like the picture of Jesus and the whole idea of Jesus Christ, that's exactly what I mean. In terms of the person who brings out the history to you and makes you visualize that history is who you see, or whatever the person shows you is what you see for eternity. Like now, even till now, when we know that, okay, we have an idea that Jesus may not have been Black or may not have been white, we still have this feeling of it has to be white. All the angels are white because this is all we've seen. So I feel at this point in time, the more we see art in for the Black race, or the more we see art that represents Black people, the more we just have a sense of belonging. So I always appreciate it when I see Black people make. And I don't mean I don't mean make Black art or take a white art and just make it Black, like the way some issues that we're having with the whole comic scene where you take Superman and make him Black Superman or something. That's not exactly what I mean. I just mean creating identities for Africans, creating identity for Black people so they can have a sense of belonging, because that's where the revolution that everyone has been asking for begins from. When you start to know that, okay, I love myself the way I am, not looking at this person that I've always seen on the TV or always seen in portraits. So that's it.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks.
Beautiful.
Definitely, I couldn't agree with you more. So let's hear from Kumar. Thank you, Ebube.
Yeah.
Kumar, what happens? What happens? What really happens when we see ourselves in creative work? Whether it's the films we see, whether it's the music, the video clips we listen to, when we have at our disposal, and specifically in our artwork, what happens?
I'm glad you asked. So I wholeheartedly agree with Ebube, and this is my opinion now. I made a conscious decision to avoid making any negative image of myself or any other Black person unless I'm being paid extraordinary sums of money. I can be bought, but you're gonna have to pay me with a payment plan. You can make me do it, but unless, because I think we have enough. We don't need no more TV shows. We don't need any more. We don't need another. As he said, we don't need Superman to be Black. We really don't. We have better stories. Go right. Is it the only thing that can fly? Make up another story. We don't need any more books on the subject. The best ones have already written. You are not going to outdo Marcus Garvey. You ain't. You're not gonna beat Malcolm X. Read him. We got him. Bring your excellent self to the table. Make better art. Make more of it. How you make things better is by making better things again and again and again and again. So that it's just normal. It's just regular. When you think of Black people in art, you think excellence as well. That seems like a trivial matter, but Michelangelo wasn't sitting in front of the Carrara marble thinking to himself, let me represent. I'm doing this for me. He was free to represent the Lord. He was free to sculpt David. He was free to think higher thoughts because his identity was allowed to be expanded because he had 400 years of Roman history to pull from, because he had 400 years of excellence to look at. We need to now produce enough excellent work, make better things to make things better. That's pretty much the formula. Do not make part 2. Do not make the Black version of. We good.
Absolutely. It's like this famous saying, it's like, I think it's Oscar Wilde, just be yourself. If you can be anything in this world, and if you can do anything in this world, just be yourself, because everyone else is taken, right? And it's very much the question of representation. We just use this term, I feel so wishy-washy, and it's very, we even bastardize it without really concentrating and focusing on what meaning there is in this word. It's very loaded. Words are things, as Maya Angelou says, So when we talk about representation and we talk about Blackness, we need to truly, in our art and our creative practice, I believe, and this is me putting my 2 cents as we wrap, I do agree with both of you that we need to be drawing from a pool that exists, contrary to popular opinion. We do need to be drawing from a pool that is empowering and inspiring and that is filled with excellence. It's only up to us to find that and to make that conscious decision, as you said, Kamar, to really do excellent work, and work that is uplifting, work that continues to inspire for generations and so many millennia to come. And I think the both of you brilliantly are contributing to this counter conversation, because that is where we are, still in 2021, 400 years after the end of slavery. We are still, and I'm framing all of this because, there's no coincidence that we're having this conversation. We're still in the decade of Afro-Black excellence, and the decade for empowerment of Black people and the African diaspora in the entire world. So these conversations are necessary, and well, those are my closing terms. My closing notes. I'd like to thank you both, Kumar and Ebube, and especially the Black Consciousness Festival, for everything you do, everything you have been doing, and I'd like to encourage you to keep inspiring all of us, and I will definitely be in touch. I'm not sure, maybe you'd like to just say some closing words real quickly, because we have gone over our hour. But thank you so much, and thanks everyone for being here with us. Kumar?
You're
Ebube?
welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for having me, and go make some more stuff better.
Yeah, excellent stuff. Ebube?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me as well. And I really appreciate the honor of having me in this situation. I'm very happy. I'm just marveled at this point. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. It was a real pleasure to be able to connect with you all the way in Nigeria, and you, Kumar, in Canada. I'm here in the Caribbean in Trinidad, but it just feels like we're in the same room because we're definitely just have shared so much in common, and we're all in the same space. So thank you all, and have a great rest of the evening. I mean, for you, it's the night already, Ebube, and take care and enjoy the rest of the festival, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.